Awesome. Okay, super. Welcome, everyone, to our regular school board meeting. Thanks for staying with us, for folks who were here earlier for the supplemental budget hearing. We do not have a special guest tonight, so we're on our own. We're going to persevere and try to do this the old-fashioned way. So. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
And no pins.
And no pins.
No pins. No pins. No pins. Okay, I believe there's a change to the agenda.
Just one amendment to the agenda, and that is for a food service quote that we need to review relative to lunch trays.
Okay, where would you like that?
We could have that occur before or after policies. Right, after policies would be my suggestion.
The policies, all right. Food service. All right. Anything else? We have a motion to.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we've got some minutes to look at and approve. This would be the public and non-public December 7th minutes, the workshop on the 14th, and the non-public on December 7th.
Why do we have that?
That doesn't make sense. Hold on.
So it should go December 7th public minutes, then December 7th non-public, and
That's
then,
it.
and then
So it was
December
repetitive.
14th. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
So we're a month ago. Any comments, feedback, changes? Let's see, I think, did we only have 3 folks at the December 7th meeting?
I believe that is correct.
Yeah, no, so no, okay,
I remember that.
all right. Yes, that makes sense. That is right. Yep.
So motion to approve both the public and non-public minutes from December 7th?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Two
303.
Abstain.
And then we have the December 14th, which looks like we had 4 people. No Stephanie at that one. Does that make sense?
No. Did I really not? I was there, wasn't I?
You were, you came like maybe 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was there.
All right, so
So
we'll
that's
make
one
that amendment.
Yep.
All right.
Make a motion to approve the December 14th minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Yeah. We can just change that. Just part of the amendment is also Mr. Toddy wasn't by his lonesome on the pledge. He had the
Cub Scouts with
Cub
them.
Scouts and
So,
Boy
yeah.
Scouts with him.
And they did a lovely job, so they should be acknowledged.
Yeah.
Mr. Toddy did steal the show.
As he will.
Make those 2 amendments to the budget workshop minutes.
Okay. So we have a special guest. For folks who aren't normally at these meetings, we try to rotate and have different high school student representatives come and kind of give us an update as to what's going on in their neck of the woods. So I think last time it was Oyster River, and now we have a special guest, I believe Savannah from Dover. So if you don't mind coming up, introducing yourself, maybe give us a little bit of background on yourself and tell us what's new and exciting at Dover High School.
Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Savannah Collinsworth. I'm a junior at Dover this year. I'm probably involved in everything you can possibly think of there. I'm the president of student council. I play percussion for the marching band and concert band. I have my own club there that I started, and I'm the president of that. I originally started here, actually. It used to be called Saving South Sudan, but we now call it Helping Hands for South Sudan. We're continuing that there. I'm also in NHS in Project Search at UNH. There's a couple other things that I do outside of school, but those are like the main things. Do you guys have like specific questions? I know I talked to Mr. Moulis about a couple things, but do you guys have like specific questions about things you want to know about?
Well, why don't you just start with an overview of what's going on? Anything that's exciting this,
Yeah.
I guess it would be term for you folks?
We're about to close the semester. So right now it's kind of just chaotic with things, but new classes will be starting within the next 2 weeks, I believe. Right now we have course selections going on for next year, so a lot of like the career tech kids, which I'm also a part of that, like just doing our interviews for that, having meetings with guidance to like figure out our schedules, which is a little crazy for me specifically going into senior year, like trying to make sure I have everything that I need to get into like the best colleges, stuff like that. Because of COVID, it's kind of difficult to do some stuff right now. Like for sports, all of our winter sports are happening right now, but a lot of stuff is getting canceled or shut down because of the weather or mainly COVID. There's also a lot of kids out. When we are in school, the teachers are doing a great job of getting us all caught back up. I was just out for 2 weeks because I had COVID, which was horrible, but everyone's been really helpful with like making sure they're not overloading us or getting us to like crowded up with like in our schedules, because like I said before, I'm involved in a lot of stuff. So making sure like my teachers are giving me the right amount of time to get stuff done has been really helpful with stuff like that. Yeah.
Nice. Any questions from anyone on the board? So we've got a number of folks. It seems like no one's here, but there's actually a lot of people online. Actually, you can see it up there. So a couple things. First thing, we have probably out there parents of, kids who are thinking about high school next year.
Yeah.
What advice would you give an 8th grader in Barrington as they think about high school and think about the high school choices they have? That's my first question. And then, my second question is, what led you to choose Dover, and what do you enjoy most about it, and what kind of things would you change if you could?
Okay. So I would say advice. I don't know what the protocol is right now for like shadowing or touring, but definitely go to every school you can. My choice was kind of just like wherever my older brother went, because it wouldn't make sense for us to go to 2 different schools, but I ended up loving Dover. I was able to do like the school-wide tour that like the whole school goes to, and then I was able to shadow there, which was really helpful. Like I like the shadowing more so than the tour, because you get like specific insight into specific classes, how the day runs. I know like as a middle schooler, you're always stressed out about like lunch in the hallways. So being able to like be in the school and like walking through all the classes, like through the bells and stuff like that was really helpful. I would say specifically for Dover, definitely the career tech center stuff. I'm in health science right now, and I love it. We get to, well, right now we don't because of COVID, but usually we get to go to clinical rotations at different nursing homes in Dover. We also, next year, I get to do like an internship for half a semester at Wentworth Douglas, but not just for health science. They have a bunch there. They have like culinary, cosmetology, auto, which my car is in all the time because it's falling apart, but it's very helpful. But it's cool like getting to see my friends like and myself, like learning things like specifically that we're going to use later on, like for careers. Like I said before, like there's so many different like varieties of stuff also. So like the culinary stuff, they have food for sale. So you can see your friends making stuff and then like trying it. And it's just like a fun experience there. You also have a lot of kids from other schools coming in. Like I see kids that I was friends with in Barrington that now go to Oyster River or Co-Brown that bus over to us and they do the career stuff there. So it's cool just like getting to see like how all these people that I grew up with are like finding their specific interests and getting involved in stuff like that. I will say, because we have the career stuff in-house, if you're going to be a part of that, definitely go to Dover. I don't know the outside source of like having to take the bus over, but I know it kind of messes with the schedule. But I love Dover. I love all the programs. I love the teachers. Being involved in a lot definitely helps with that. Like I said, I know like almost all the teachers. I have like high leadership positions and stuff like that, which definitely like helped my experience of not transferring, but like moving up to like a higher educational school, which is really cool. But I would say, like, just to recap, definitely tour, try to get into all the schools. I highly recommend Dover, but I'm also biased. Yeah, I think the biggest things, we also have really good athletics. I'm involved in ski team, which is happening right now, and then spring track in the spring. But like, even like if you're not involved in stuff like going to the football games, like it's just a fun environment. And I know some of the other schools don't have all of those sports, which is, it's cool being able to see everything, be a part of it, look in from like an outside view. It's just really fun.
Football games are great. Any questions, comments? You said you're the president of Honor Society?
President of Student Council,
Student
yes.
Council, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, listen, Savannah, thank you so much for coming out. So, President of Student Council, Barrington student, check that off. Again,
Nice work.
nice job.
Thank you.
You know, it goes without saying that we appreciate you coming out here, and we certainly appreciate all of the success you've had in Dover. And I think I speak on behalf of anybody who's listening in. You know, your insights with regards to, you know, how you should approach looking at high school, I think are very well said.
Yeah.
And hopefully our parents listening in will take full advantage of that. So thanks again for coming
Of
out.
course, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you don't have to stay if you don't want. But it's public comment time, so. All right, so we're moving on. Public comment, 2 opportunities for public comment. I took a brief look around. I can see a lot of familiar faces online and in person, so I shouldn't have to reiterate it, but I'm going to anyway. It's 3 minutes. Not a minute more, not a second more. I will give everyone a 15-second warning when they're approaching the 3-minute mark. Keep your comments crisp. Be a Barrington resident. Keep your comments crisp. Keep them courteous. And if somebody has made your point eloquently, feel free to compliment them on that. There's no need to re-articulate a point that's already been made. We get it. And that is about it. So we're going to start with folks in person, and then we're going to go online. And I see some folks have already got it. Use the raise your hand feature if you're online and you want to participate. So I got my little clipboard. Anyone in person? Dan. And sir, you want to just come right in line right after Dan? Huh? Yeah.
Hey, Dan Mantrek, 353 Scruton Pond Road, also representing the Select Board. Kind of FYI, we did our budget hearing on the 3rd of January. We're proposing a budget of about $7 million, not big compared to yours, but about a 5% increase from last year. That'll be about, we estimate that our individual tax rate will stay the same at about $295 per thousand based on the increased valuation and our additional income that we're getting. That's a 0% increase. That's about 15% of what we estimate to be the total tax burden for this year. Not exactly right. And I would remind everyone that the 19th of January, tomorrow, is the first day to sign up for elective office. So if you are planning to run for office, you need to sign up in the next 10 days. It'll go through the 28th. If you have any questions of me, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before I go to public comment, I'm going to inform
Could you state your name, though, first, just so we get that on the record? Thank you.
Adam Robert Duguay. Before I can go to my public comment, I'm going to speak with Barrington citizens about what's about to happen.
So this is, just be clear, this is your public comment.
No, this is informing the public.
And you have 3 minutes to do that as part of your public comment.
I'm just going to keep going then.
Okay?
When hired servants or entities fail to correct the wrong, provide remedies, fail to honor the Bill of Rights, fail to show where they believe they have constitutional authority, they violate people's rights and fail to furnish evidence within 5 days, they acquiesce by default that they are working to attack the people. This goes against their indenture and constitution and is a willful trespass against the rights of the people. Please meet these legal demands or you will be subject to NH RSA 41-A. You are now being served with notice to intend to pursue whatever legal means is required to rectify the violation of the New Hampshire Constitution, all state constitutions, and the United States Constitution. Restore power back to the parents and the people. Notice to agent is notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. I've given you guys copies. I've secured the originals. You've been served. You've been served. Okay? You're most welcome. I made sure your signature was extra pretty. You've been served. You've been served. You've been served.
You have 52 seconds.
I, Adam Duguay, one of the people as New Hampshire Bill of Rights, Article 8, sui juris, in this court of record, you being trustees of the people must provide due care and remember your oaths which bind you. I make the following statements and claims. NH Bill of Rights, Article 8, all power resides originally and being derived from the people. All the magistrates and officers of the government are their subjects, their substitutes and agents, and at all times accountable to them. Government, therefore, should be open, accessible, accountable, and responsible. New Hampshire Constitution, Article 1, Part 1, Article 29. The power of suspending the laws or the execution of them ought never be exercised but by the legislator
3 minutes.
or
Thank you.
by authority.
All right. You know these. Next.
Am I back on?
You are.
All right, Carolyn Robbins, Chesley Drive. I want to apologize for, I hope, the majority of the town for the disrespect that you are continually shown at these meetings, meeting after meeting after meeting, after you clearly state the rules. I thank you guys for working really hard for our town and for our schools and for our kids, and always treating every single person that comes here with much more respect than you guys are treated with some of the time. I wanted to add to some stuff Savannah was talking about Dover High School. A lot of people think about Dover High School as, oh, my kid is going to go there because they want that vocational technical program, which is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but they're also an amazing academic school. My third son right now is a freshman at Dover and is currently trying to decide whether he wants to do the pre-engineering program or the electrical program. So he is weighing basically a really strong academic program with one of the vocational programs, and it's just really nice at Dover that they have that huge variety. I have 2 kids that went to Oyster River, absolutely loved their experiences there as well, but it's just a very different thing at Dover. You just have every opportunity to do basically whatever you want. You know, I can't leave without talking about masks, so you know, I think that fingers crossed, I hope that numbers are heading in the right direction. I hope we're getting kind of over the hump of the holidays and all of that, but I don't think we're quite there yet. So I hope that you guys will consider continuing the mask mandate. Good and bad about Omicron taking over everything is that it's not as severe sickness. We're not seeing as much death. Death numbers, you know, percentages are way down. But that doesn't change the fact that if you get COVID, you're out of school for a significant period of time. And Omicron is insanely contagious. It's everywhere. It's going to run through us all eventually, but give our health workers a break for 5 seconds. Just be careful and be safe, and let's do everything that we can to slow it down so that people going to the hospital for a heart attack actually have a bed to be put in, so that people, you know, who have cancer and need surgery can have their surgery. Their surgeries aren't being canceled because their hospitals are overwhelmed. We all need to do everything that we can for the greater good of the community, for the greater good of all the healthcare workers around, for the betterment of our kids. Your job obviously isn't all of the other stuff, but as far as the kids, if we want to keep them in school, this is one way that's going to help a lot in doing that. Omicron is crazy contagious, even at 6-foot distance, even with masks. We just need to do everything we can to cut it down as much as possible for as long as possible. Yes, eventually we're all going to get it. Yes, it's going to be around for 1,000,000 years. Let's just kind of get over the hump where everybody can get an exposure in a slow and steady rate, so that schools aren't, you know, short teachers. Schools aren't having 50% of kids in their classroom. My kid at Dover, he's had a couple of days where they've had 50% attendance at school. I'm done. Okay, thank you. Love you. Bye.
Thank you. No, thank you. All right. Anybody else in person? All right, let's go online. Reminder, don't be an idiot. Okay. Now we're going to start with Lori. We know that will be good. And, oops. Oh, there we go. Lori?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, great, thanks. Well, first, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And I wanted to start by saying thank you so much to our administrators and our teachers, because they are working tirelessly at such a difficult time to keep our schools running and to give our kids as much normalcy as possible. They have been in the trenches for such a long time now, and even though they must be completely exhausted, they continue to show up and work hard for our students and our school community every single day. So I just wanted to really express my sincere gratitude to them. They are amazing. And then, of course, I'm going to always talk about masks, but I promise I'll try to keep it brief. I'm just calling to ask that you continue the universal masking in our schools. You know, our hospitals are flooded, over 400 people right now. Carolyn said it great, so I don't need to go into details. We know the positivity rate, last I saw, was over 20%, over 20,000 active cases last I saw. Right here in Barrington, over 100 active cases. And then the important thing also being, in addition, Omicron is breaking through vaccinations, making it even more important to use every tool we have to reduce community spread for many of the reasons Carolyn said. And then, of course, most importantly, is that we need to keep our students and teachers healthy so that we can keep them in school. And then just given how high the numbers are, I think it makes sense to continue universal masking at least until the first school board meeting after February vacation, because they're just so insanely high right now, and they've been high since August. And every time we think they're going down, they've actually continued to go up. February vacation is only a handful of weeks away. I think it would make sense to revisit this at the first school board meeting after that February vacation. And then finally, I wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you school board members. I've been attending these meetings remotely, and I'm just going to second what Carolyn said. I'm so sorry for the nonsense you all put up with. Every one of you is volunteering your time, your hard work, and I believe you are all doing what you believe is really best and giving this a lot of thought and care. And so I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you, and that I really appreciate all your work.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
Okay. Kind of surreal with these feedback things. I feel like she's right here. Anybody else online? Oops. Oh, shoot. All right. I think I screwed that up. Yep. Okay. I think we're good. Okay. And we're rolling. Administrative reports, mid-year report. What? Oh, there's one more. Okay, sorry. I apologize. I must have missed that. But you're next. Caitlin.
Hi there. Good evening.
Hi. Sorry about that.
Hi, no worries. So I'm going to try not to sound repetitive, but when I spoke earlier in the fall to advocate for masks being optional, I said there would always be a new variant because the virus isn't going anywhere. And here we are in January with a new variant. In my opinion, I don't think we're in a pandemic. There's no state of emergency, and this new variant has proven to be far less virulent than the previous one. In fact, it's hard to tell the difference between Omicron and a common cold. It's time to take the mask off and make it optional. And if not now, then when? What are we waiting for? It seems like the goalpost keeps getting pushed farther and farther. When will we stop damaging our children's social and emotional development to appease booster-eligible adults who are comforted by useless cloth masks? Those in favor of universal masking said we needed to continue to mask until the kids can be vaccinated. Well, they can be now. Despite numerous studies showing the ineffectiveness of masks that some of us have known for a while now, the CDC and the media are now reporting how useless cloth masks are against this virus. Yet I think it's fair to say that the majority of the kids are wearing them. There was a great article earlier this month on Seacoast Online written by Dr. Daniel Kim, who's a pulmonologist and ICU doctor at Exeter Hospital. And he says, and I quote, "In the only published cluster randomized control trial to date during the pandemic, surgical masks had an 11% risk reduction and cloth masks had zero effect on the primary endpoint of symptom-driven lab-positive results." Dr. Kim goes on to talk about the need to focus on the high-risk population with multiple comorbidities and not on children. He says, quote, "The precise problem with COVID-19 is the 10 to 20 million American adults with comorbid risk factors and no immunity to SARS-CoV-2. They possess neither vaccinated immunity nor natural immunity, and they're continuing to die in high numbers, and we have to do everything possible to encourage them to be safe and avoid certain risks. Most importantly, they need to get vaccinated quickly, and they needed to do it yesterday. This is our greatest challenge. It's not Omicron, it's not mild illness, it's not positive cases, it's not the college student who's mandated to test every week, then doomed to solitary confinement after a false positive. It's not a cloth mask on a 2-year-old who wants to join their parents at a coffee shop, or a 5-year-old learning to read, or the 11-year-old who wants to see their friends' faces," end quote. Dr. Kim, in my opinion, is spot on. My son comes home with a full lunchbox every day, having eaten maybe a granola bar. Sure, he can be a picky eater, he's 6, but the main reason he doesn't eat his lunch is because that's the only time during the day he gets to see and interact with his friends without their faces covered, and he's taking advantage of that time. With a vaccine that is so effective against severe illness and death, why on earth do our kids still need to be in masks? I once again respectfully request that the mask mandate expire tonight, and starting tomorrow, that masks become the parents' choice as it should have been all along. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, one more. Hey, Janine? You're on.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dave. First, thank you to the school board, teachers, principals, superintendent, and even those weary budget committee members for all their continued dedication on behalf of students and staff in Barrington. We see you guys, we value your work. And I just wanted to chime in and also express support for the continued use of masks. We all have an article we could reference, or I could tell you about my 6-year-old who eats her lunch every day, even though it's her first mask break. But I think what we have to stick to is what the experts are recommending. And the advice on the local, state, and national level is that we follow best practice and continue utilizing all of the mitigation strategies available to us. And that does include universal masking during the surge phase of a pandemic. So I just wanted to say thank you and express my continued support for following the best practice recommendations of our national experts. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. And now I think, oh. Kara?
Hi, Kara Mattel, Pontville Road, and nothing original. Also, to continue universal masking. The numbers being so high and the variants being so contagious, it's important that we use all tools available to us. I'm going to echo what Janine and Lori and Carolyn said and keep it short. So thank you for your time and your dedication to keeping our kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you. You win. 30 seconds. Thank you. Okay. Okay. If you've already commented, just if you don't mind, just remember to put your hand down, and then if you're going to comment, the next public comment, it's no harm in putting your hand up now so that we can jump right on it. And now, the mid-year review.
So I'm just going to hit the highlights and then answer any questions that you all have at the end. So preschool numbers have fluctuated a little bit, and it actually has worked in our favor. I think they have fluctuated due to pandemic. People have obviously made different choices, so we haven't hit that high capacity number. But like I said, it's actually been a benefit to us because students have needed a little more time and care, both socially, emotionally, but also I've mentioned the incidence of disability and the intensity and requirement of services has gone up significantly. So not that we haven't seen it before. It's not unusual. It just tends to come in waves. And right now it's a little swell on the uptick in the younger grades. So that is an update there. Overall, our percent of identified students has remained very stable over the past 5 years. I keep holding my breath a little bit when I run the numbers because there's a lot of concern right now over academic progress and growth. But I think our teams are doing a fantastic job looking very closely at the why behind that. So right now, we're at about 19%, and then we've fluctuated between 17 and 19% over the last 5 years. Staffing has continued to be a challenge. Superintendent Willis will talk more about that when he gives his report, but for me it's a little more global than just our schools within Barrington. When I'm looking at students that are attending out-of-district placements or the Seacoast Charter School, they're struggling as well. So that then trickles down to, okay, how are we going to support these kiddos? So that's a struggle all around. And placements are certainly seeing an increase in severity of behavior, which then has resulted in them asking for additional staff to support those needs. So we're seeing certainly an increase in cost in sending students out of district when those needs arise, which sometimes they do, and that's the appropriate thing, but it also tells us to continue to work hard and build capacity within our own buildings as well. The IDEA grant, this is an old story, but it's finally kind of come to closure, I think. There was some confusion several years ago around the calculation and whether the finances stayed within the district or follow the student. So we worked out agreements with Oyster River and Dover as far as those funds, and Co-Brown and SAU 44 because the funds go there. We were still trying to iron that out, and we finally have done so. So they have an alternative program that we sometime access, and there is a staff member that salary is paid for out of their grant. So there's a direct connection to how Barrington kids are benefiting from those funds when the need arises. Financially and educationally, we've had very good success using that program. And as long as we use it for a minimum of one student each year, or if you average that out, then it's a good cost-effective use of our funds as well. So that is an update on the IDA grant. Homeless numbers in the report was 7. We have an increase to 9, and that number also includes homelessness from a family perspective, but also unaccompanied youth are included in that number as well, just for your reference there. So a teenage-ish age student who may be not with their biological family for one reason or another and are residing elsewhere would fall under that category. We are doing our mid-year mini DESA right now. We did see a bit of an increase with the fall numbers, so we're waiting to see what the progress monitoring will be in January. If we're going to be stable, up, down, we're waiting. So that window is happening currently. If you think about the percentages of students who you would typically see, say, your higher achievers, your kids in the average realm, your kids who have high need, that percentage is usually 1% to 5%, and we're definitely seeing higher numbers of need right now, which I think everybody is. So we'll see what those mid-year numbers look like. And I think that wraps it up for the general overview. Questions about that? Or anything else in the report I didn't hit on?
Could you just take a look at the identified numbers for Co-Brown, because they don't seem to add up.
Then the percentages?
No, number of identified, so it has 5 and 3, and then it says total 6.
Oh, yes, it does. I did not change the number. Yep.
No, it'll get posted later, so.
And total number of students doesn't add up either.
Did I have a bad math day?
Bad math life. So don't feel bad.
I will double check them.
Looks like I did a typo.
And Dan, it's my understanding that with the IDA grant that there may be some movement that will go back to the money following to the student's district instead of their school of residence. Is that accurate?
I have not heard that.
Ours isn't the only town that found itself in this situation.
There's quite a few, actually. But no, I actually have asked, so the way it was explained to me at the Department of Ed it was a redistribution that a federal regulation came down and said the money must follow the student. So they are still trying to figure out how do you manage that when you have cooperatives, basically, when you have tuition agreements. So, but the Special Ed Administrators Association, as well as others, have asked for the commissioner to ask for that clarification to the Office of Special Ed, federal office, but to my knowledge, that hasn't happened.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments?
No, at some point I'd like to, we did this a few years ago, but I like to check in on it periodically, is to look at our surrounding peers and see what rate they're identifying their students at by grade. Just to, it's comparing apples and oranges, I know, but it's just a nice reference. Thanks.
Which is interesting because, this is low for us, right? I want to say that we were in the 22, 23% range, right? Oh.
It's been a while, but yes.
Yeah.
Probably 7, 8 years ago, it was that high.
That was my first couple of years in the district.
And it has gone down a little bit.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I do have a question about that.
Any in particular you want me to look at?
Just comparables. I don't, well, it's comparables. What folks we normally pull from. Yeah.
It's abutting towns, really, I mean, right? Because, I mean, that's the population pool that we're part of. So I noticed that, there's some jumps in call it head count, like in fifth, fourth, eighth grade, right? So just out of curiosity, is that a set of students that have kind of gone through the system, or are we identifying more kids in eighth grade, identifying more kids in fourth grade?
No, so you definitely see trends where you have a higher percentage in a particular group. But
It's the cohort that's moving
It's the
through.
cohort,
Okay,
it's not
it's a
tied to a
cohort.
grade level.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Generally, when are kids identified by?
Well, so
And
the
obviously, they can do any point in time, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the majority.
So you have your group of kids who come to you already at 3 years old. But if they just enter the system as a kindergartner, we start to look very critically at them by the end of first grade, beginning of second grade. I mean, not that we're not looking critically all the time, but from do we need to do a formalized evaluation? Let's look at all that data. And depending on the severity, the teams will have that conversation in first grade.
So it kind of goes back to the point that's been made before, which is that early intervention obviously pays dividends, right?
Absolutely.
Anything else?
Are you finding that there are a lot of students that aren't pushing through the barrier of being formally identified, but do you know what I mean? I'm saying it's not like there's a red light, green light. There's a whole lot of gray in there. So I was wondering if you could speak to how many, anecdotally.
Students who are not special education, but who are struggling?
Yes.
So we have child study teams at all three of the buildings. And I would say, well, that would be a great, we can hit the principals up for that information at a future meeting because they can speak to that. They have formalized processes, and I know that they have been very busy.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's certainly, so that's one of the cautions right now, right, is being very careful around not identifying a student as a special education student when it is loss of instruction or they just need a different type of instruction. So that's the function of your child study team.
All right. Anything else?
So we have Ms. Dealey to provide a report for the ECLC.
Okay.
Oh, segue right with that early intervention remark. So we're in a great period. I love the sort of the 7-8 week period between the Christmas break and February break in our school because kids have spent so much time learning procedures and routines and really how to be students, which most haven't had that experience. And you really get to see this, incredible progress. Or for some kids, it doesn't happen, right? And I think this is where we get into child study team meetings. And Carrie, to answer your question, we usually by the end of the year have about 12 kids in kindergarten that have an informal action plan, right? But it's got a lot in it that is happening for kids. But it's a great communication tool for when they go to first grade. So as the interventionist, my students, I've been working with them. Some of them are flying and it's working. And then there are some where we're like, this isn't working. So we're trying a different program with them. So it's a time of kind of reshuffling and really seeing where kids are at and what they need. So that's sort of where we're at in this period of time. We have tomorrow is our Mitten Tree Day, which is kind of cool because this happened years ago in Barrington forever. Students would leave, kindergartners and preschoolers leave with a handmade pair of mittens. And then it sort of went away. And Pam Lindsay, who, thank goodness, has never gone away. She retired, but she just keeps coming back pretty much daily to the ECLC. And Lisa Smith just a paraprofessional, just great community advocate in Barrington, have brought it back. So we have, I think we probably got 300 pairs of mittens created, and they're hanging on trees thanks to the Christmas stuff. And tomorrow the students will hear a lovely little story about a woman who took care of her community by providing mittens for them, and then they'll get to go to the tree and select a pair of mittens. And it's very fun to watch because they are very careful about which pair they choose. They don't take this decision lightly at all. So that's happening tomorrow. I mentioned at the last meeting that we had launched our lottery, and that's going well. It looks like we have 21 spots available in our 3-year-old program. Currently, we have 17 people who have registered for the lottery, so that's looking like, you know, most people would get a spot. In the 4-year-old program, currently we have, if all the students that are in the 3-year-olds move to the 4-year-olds program, we would have 7 spots available, and we currently have 12 people in the lottery for that. So it's good we're having the lottery, I guess. And Friday at 1, we will have a preschool Q&A. So just any parents that want to learn more, it's a online meeting, meet our teachers and learn all about the program. So hop on if you have any interest in that. We have our readathon coming up. We did this last year for the first time, and it was great. Just really encouraging kids to read, and it's also a fundraiser. The first step will be asking for anyone who is interested in sponsoring it to do so. So we're hitting up our local businesses for that. We're gearing up for our annual secure campus and lockdown drills. It's really always with a focus on keeping kiddos safe. As Deanna mentioned, teachers are administering the DESA. We're also administering the PALS assessment. Again, sort of that, you know, we're in that period where we're really doing a deeper dive and looking at kids who we feel like aren't quite moving along like we want them to with their literacy. And shout out to teachers. Just the remote day was great. I mean, we came back from break, and that week we were all in preparation mode, and it's a lot of work, but they just rallied and really always just sort of just go above and beyond and really want to provide great instruction and connection with their students. So that was good. Challenges, you know, I'll just say COVID. You know, there's just a lot around it. And every time we have sort of a shift in policies, like the quarantine moving from 10 to 5 days, it just kind of creates a lot of question. And just a shout out to Catherine, our school nurse, who, I mean, she is, in our little building, she is straight out every day. I can't even, you know, the other 2 buildings, I can only imagine. So she is making phone calls to parents. You know, this morning we kind of have a little COVID club. We meet each morning after we've looked at pickup patrol, which parents are doing a great job of really putting some detail in. And we, you know, cross-reference that with Power School. We cross-reference that with any emails teachers have gotten. And then we just, you know, she says, okay, I have about 25 to 30 phone calls to make. And so she's making those calls while she's also printing out positive results, negative results. And then, of course, we have kiddos that need to see the nurse. So she's super busy, but does a great job. So kudos to her as well. So moving and grooving.
Wow.
ECLC.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
It's great to see the mitten tree back. I didn't know it wasn't. I didn't know it had left. So
Yeah, I didn't really know either
it's
until
a
brought
welcome
to my-
return, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good Barrington tradition to bring back. So
Absolutely. Any questions before we move on? Comments? All right.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Leatherman next.
Good evening. A little hoarse from the game the other day, so.
Go Bengals.
Yeah. We did iReady mid-year last week, struggling with some attendance just due to COVID. So reading 350 out of 403 kids have tested, and in math we got 334 out of 403 have tested. Seeing some actually good numbers. We've been focusing on reading in our RTI. At the beginning of the year, we had 171 students that were above, mid, or early on grade level. We got that number up to 293, which means there are 122 students right now at above, mid, or early on grade level. Beginning of the year, We had 106 students who were one grade level below. We got that down to 80, so that's 26 students moving in the right direction. And at the beginning of the year, we had 109 students who were 2 or more grade levels below. We got that down to 76, so 33 kids have moved in the right direction. So we're moving we're doing pretty well. Like I said, our RTI focus has been on reading. I mean that if a kid qualifies for both, they have to go to reading first. So we're making some really good gains. Scheduling committee is still continuing to meet, but a great deal of conversation, debate, passion about when the RTI should happen. I said, that's it, I'm done. We're going to send a survey out. And so we said morning, middle of the day, afternoon 1. So that's been settled now. So the scheduling committee has taken their 4 schedules they got. They can pencil in that time in the afternoon when they want a success block to be RTI. And so now we can roll those 4 schedules out to the staff and make a determination. Ms. Hollis selected her cast for the drama presentation, and they're busy practicing and getting ready for the performance. Struggle, we continue to interview, we continue to offer jobs, and oh, sorry, I don't want the job. So it's really frustrating to go through the whole interview process, offer to somebody, and they say no. So, but we're going to continue to keep plugging along. We did have our annual volleyball game. Teachers are still undefeated, just saying. So, you know, and we have a white bus. It started today. Typically, a few hiccups. I'm working with the bus company to remedy those. And hopefully, at the end of the month, we're going to have another additional high school bus for Dover. So that'll alleviate some of that too.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
That's good. How full are the buses?
The Dover one is full. The other buses, again, goes in, I mean.
Depends, right?
I mean, and to be honest with you, attendance is really, you know, we've got 50 kids out a day, so that affects ridership.
That helps. Yeah.
Fridays are bad because there's no sports. So Friday, I don't say bad. The buses are fuller on Friday due to the fact that everybody goes home on Friday.
Right.
In the afternoons, you know, with band and jazz band and aftercare and basketball, not as many kids riding the bus in the afternoon. Basically just shorten that time up that a kid's on the bus.
Right. Makes sense. Questions?
What play are they doing this year?
Oh, you would ask me that.
Never mind.
You don't know what play?
At it, I forget. Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Oh, I knew that. Into the Woods. I did. Said it. I don't know what Into the Woods is. I can typically know the Disney ones. This one I'm not familiar with, so I'll be surprised.
Well, thank you.
That's good. See, even you learned something tonight.
I did learn something tonight, yeah. Any questions? Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Thanks, Terry.
All right.
We're rolling.
Right.
Next.
So Mr. Delange will get the PowerPoint up, but before we go into that, I'm just going to provide a couple other updates for the board and for folks listening this evening. Just a curriculum instruction and assessment update. Dr. Hall, Ms. Cookish, and Ms. Talon are in the process of finalizing a social emotional learning survey for families to complete to obtain perspectives on social emotional learning. This survey will have 5 to 6 questions, including a question on specific topics that families would like addressed by the school district. A question to determine if informational meetings at the school and/or remote informational meetings is a preference, and assess families' priorities for social emotional learning. So again, it'll be about 5 or 6 questions. We're looking to have that finalized and sent out to families by the end of this month. Another curriculum and instruction and assessment update is remote learning, as mentioned by Ms. Dealey. Remote learning, our first remote learning day for inclement weather happened in the last week, and the district is creating a remote learning survey for families and teachers to get their feedback on the first remote learning day due to inclement weather. The survey will focus on the school schedule, will focus on a question on technology support with remote learning, areas of improvement, and areas that were positive overall with the remote learning day. And so those will be some of the questions relative to remote learning. Before I get into the PowerPoint, the last thing I want to mention, and the principals mentioned this as well in their reports a little bit, is one of the challenges that we as a district continue to face due to the impact of the pandemic is on our teachers and staff. Specifically, the following provides just a few areas for the board, again, just to provide that overview for the board and for folks listening this evening. Currently, we're experiencing greater responsibilities such as creating instructional learning materials at the elementary school for students that are completing the required quarantine guidance this year. So that's a little bit different than last year. Last year, we had both the remote learning environment and we had the in-person learning environment. But this year, we're particularly at the elementary school and at all the schools creating instructional learning materials to have students complete while they're absent. Another area is teachers and staff that is due to staff and teacher absences that causes an effect on teachers and staff to assist with additional school responsibilities and duties to manage the school operations on a day-to-day basis. So if staff and teachers are out on a given day or for multiple days, then this requires other staff to pick up recess duties, lunch duties, and other responsibilities and duties during the day. These are a little bit different than last year, some different challenges than what was experienced last year. And in many cases, in a lot of cases, some of them could not be anticipated, I think, at the start of this year. Some of them probably were not anticipated as we started. And bringing these challenges forward to the board, it's more of an awareness and in what ways collectively we as a district can alleviate or look to alleviate particular areas of burden that have been placed on the staff. So it's just more of, in the awareness phase, but I did want to bring that forward for folks here that are here in public and also for the school board as well. Going into the PowerPoint now.
Any questions or comments
sure.
on that before we move on?
Yep.
Just take a pause. All right.
I have something. So I know in our meeting, the wellness committee meeting, and they brought up the stuff about creating packets and then in particular taking on their extra duties affected their time for making packages for students at home while they're quarantining or have COVID. And we talked about possibly finding some volunteer help to alleviate some of that, if there's any way that we can get people in the building. I know that's tough with COVID, but I'm sure there's ways to put them in there and keep them separate from other people. But I think that's a really good idea because those packages are really helpful for our students who have to be home for extended periods of time.
Absolutely. And so as Ms. McCosker mentioned at our wellness committee meeting, that came up. And so that was one recommendation that Stephanie had mentioned, that we could help alleviate, some of the extra time that's spent to get those materials ready, that we can support teachers and staff. And I think that's a great suggestion. And that's really just some of the ideas that we need, just need to look at a little bit more.
Have we tapped into volunteers?
Not as much as we can. That's a potential area that we can focus in on more.
Do we have volunteers currently?
We do have some volunteers. This year, we have started to, last year, there wasn't a need, we weren't having volunteers as much in the buildings. This year, we can definitely have volunteers more in the buildings. So that is something we can certainly look at. And I think there is some staff and some volunteers that are willing to support our staff.
Yeah, I think maybe just parents are assuming that they're not allowed to volunteer. So
Okay.
maybe knowing that that's a thing that can happen would be
An option.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Anything else before we move on? Okay.
All right, so next is the presentation that's behind Mr. Svensson here. So I'm going to start with active cases. So since the last report we've had, there's going to be a little bit of history from the month of December. So you can see active cases going back to December 8th after our last school board meeting. There was 97 active cases in Barrington. And then that slowly decreased over December through the 17th. And then as it continues through the month of December, on the next slide, you can see that it decreases to about 34, 36, and then during the holiday break and after we come back from holiday break, that last day in December that I had a report out from the state was 52 active cases. And then when you go into January, what starts to happen is on January 3rd, January 4th, right around 40 to 45 cases. And then through the 14th, as of Friday, there was 110 active cases in Barrington. And then I haven't reported this out today, but on the state website for Barrington, and these numbers will be updated, active cases as of today is 153. So obviously that's not reported here, but as you can see, the trend line for active cases has increased pretty significantly over the last week or so, or over the last few weeks. Next slide is positivity rate in Barrington. And similarly, for the month of December, you can see that trend line dipped quite a bit right around just before the holiday break, December 17th, December 21st. Rate got below even at 1.10%. And then when you go to January, you can see that it starts to increase rapidly, over 20% on most days in the month of January, right around 20%, or at a minimum 15% on most of those days for January for the positivity rate. Stratford County positivity rate, similarly for December, was right around 12-13% for December. And then January, a similar correlation happened with the town of Barrington, where it started right around 15% and then increased to, as of Friday, about 22-23% positivity rate for Stratford County. So again, you have that similar trend line. The next two slides, what I did is I provided a snapshot for the board and for folks in the public. This is Friday. Active cases are in blue for each school, and orange are recovered COVID-19 cases per school. So you have that information here for the 14th, and then again for the 18th. And as we speak for today, particularly, when I reported out on the district matrix, we had one active cluster at the elementary school. A cluster is 3 or more cases that are related in some particular way, related linked cases. As of today, we have 2 additional cluster of cases at the elementary school. So again, that can change very rapidly from day to day. So it's just important to note that. When you look at the district matrix, and this is something I added from last time when we had our last meeting that the board had asked for, is I took this snapshot of the district matrix report. Jeff, if you could go to the next slide for me. And I included the absenteeism based upon how it's been impacted due to the pandemic, cases of absenteeism related to COVID-19. So you have, again, student absenteeism by percentage by school. ECLC, as of Friday, 11%, BMS 5%, and then BES was moving towards that moderate level of 12%. You could make an argument that it's still less than 15, but it was trending more into that moderate level. And then staff capacity, this is based upon staff absences. You can see again in blue for Barrington Middle School, and then you can see ECLC there as well. Is at 10%, but BES, again, the impact there of staff absenteeism impacts school operations, which I spoke about before, is trending more into that moderate level based upon the level of school impact. The next matrix report.
Can we go back to that one for just a second?
Sure.
I'm trying to understand why the student absenteeism at 12% is in the 15 to 30% box. Shouldn't it be in the under 15? I get that it's towards the higher end of the under 15, but
It's under 15.
It's under 15, so
it should be blue, correct?
yeah, it should, you can make the argument, I was making that judgment call, but it's still technically, it's still less than 15%, so it should be in the minimal level. So I'll make that update to that.
I mean, that's a good comment to make with regards to trending, but I think for the purposes of the matrix, you probably want to sort of just color within the lines on that. And
Okay.
15 is 15.
Okay.
But the point's well taken. The other question on this with regards to the cluster, and I know last time we sort of went through this exercise, and you can use contact tracing, but there was some conversation about some of the clusters and understanding the clusters with a little bit more granularity. And at least last time we had multiple clusters. I think 2 of the clusters were rationalized based on siblings and sort of known cohorts.
Right.
Are we still doing that when we get a cluster?
Yes. So for instance, when I speak to DHHS, I go through those scenarios with them as far as the specifics of those cases. So whether one of the questions that they ask of me is this related to school, possibly having a school influence as a factor for the cluster, or was it outside the school setting? So that question comes up as well when I report out and get, kind of talk through the specifics of that cluster of cases.
We still report the clusters as a cluster, even though there might be mitigating circumstances.
Correct. Correct.
So we have 2 at BES. Now, I know this is dated, right? 03.
3 as of today.
Have we done that exercise with those 3?
Yes, we have.
And using sort of the algorithms we've used before with regards to close explanations, what impact would that have, if any? Or not, wouldn't change the matrix, I understand that. If you don't know offhand, that's okay.
I actually have that, just give me 1 second.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
It could have been an anecdotal answer.
No, I want to give that a precise answer. I could say 2 of the 3 clusters correlate with the potential of relating to school, 2 of the 3. And again, a cluster of cases for folks in the audience and listening online is 3 or more cases that are somehow linked together. But to Mr. Gibson's point, 2 of them out of the 3 can be linked within the school setting.
Right. So in other words, siblings as an example.
Could be an example.
Right. Right.
All right. Let me just go back here. So the next slide after level of school impact is, again, Barrington cases. So again, as of Friday, their total active cases was 110 active cases in Barrington. The PCR positivity rate was 20.4%, and number of new infections per 100,000 over the prior 14 days was 1,730. Again, as part of that matrix report, we also have the Stratford County community transmission data. PCR test positivity rate is 21.9%. Number of new infections per 100,000 is 1,901. And then confirmed hospitalizations is at, as of Friday, for the Seacoast region is at 79. So they group hospitalizations by region of the state, not by county. And then the last, and again, this is as of Friday, making decisions relative to our face mask policy. At the time of this report, we had a single cluster in the school setting, and the standard was still in the substantial range for universal face masks as the practice for our schools right now. The last slide just provides an update and recommendations. So the COVID-19 Task Force Committee has met each of the last 2 weeks, and these are just some updates for the board and for others here listening in tonight. We're getting additional COVID-19 PCR tests ordered for each school. Mr. Toll is picking those up at the state in Concord, in Concord offices. State still provides testing for school districts. As of Friday, I spoke with McGregor EMS, and I am coordinating a vaccine clinic with McGregor EMS for the booster vaccine next Thursday, January 27th at Barrington Middle School. It'll be in the afternoon time, potentially 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. We'll be sending out paperwork for families that are interested in having their child or children receive the booster vaccine here at school. So that's a great opportunity that I'm happy to coordinate with McGregor Memorial EMS to provide. Oyster River had a similar opportunity last week that they provided during the school day as well. Updates to the New Hampshire DHHS quarantine guidance of 5 days with symptoms improving. A review of face masks during physical education classes. So that came up both at our Wellness Committee meeting and also in our COVID-19 Task Force Committee meeting, and then with our administrative team meeting today. And so the decisions here was based upon physical education teachers wanting to have that latitude to make that decision. As an administrative team, for the consistency of our policy with indoor physical education activities, we are still recommending and asking for the board to continue with face masks for indoor gym activities to be required. And then review of return to school plan. So the return to school plan is in your packet of information tonight. Highlighted are specific changes. Most of those changes in the packet refer to updates to the quarantine guidance, such as on page 9 that talks about handling a presumptive positive case. Also relative to, besides that, we added a chart that was sent in the district message relative to quarantine and isolation guidance as referenced by New Hampshire DHHS and New Hampshire DPHS. So that's included in the packet. And then we did a few strike-throughs on pages 11 and 12, which really references the prior guidance of 10 days. So that is now has a strike-through on those specific pages. And then lastly, we added an Appendix E, which is updated from the prior Appendix E on household contact exposure flow chart for deciding when to quarantine. So the other Appendix E was now outdated because of the quarantine guidance. This is the updated version for that. So those are the substantive changes to the return to school plan. The majority of the COVID-19 Task Force Committee recommended continuing with the face mask requirement in schools. The following metrics were recommended by the COVID-19 Task Force Committee in priority order as part of the decision-making for requiring to keep face masks. One was the number of cases in the schools, so that school level community transmission. 2 was the number of cases in Barrington, and 3 was the number of cases in Stratford County. So those were based upon priority need as far as the metrics that were looked at to continue the face mask requirement.
Well, I'm sorry, walk me through that one again. I mean, I understand what it means. So I thought the metrics, I thought you were using a different set of metrics. Are you proposing changing the metrics? Because we were, prior, you wanted to, you had this, you were looking at hospitalizations, and are these now the core metrics that you want to look at?
So my understanding is all of these district matrix points are part of value as far as making our decision, but my understanding from the board, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that if you were going to prioritize the top 3, all of these are looked at, but if you were going to say in a vacuum, what are the top 3 out of all of them that we're looking at? These, I asked the committee last week, what would be the top 3? Not that it dismisses the other metric point, other data points, but it's saying these were the 3 that were of the highest priority.
Okay. So are there thresholds associated with it?
Yes. So for instance, thresholds for school community transmission, again, anything in this substantial range or even.
Hold on. I just want to make sure I understand this. So because, I don't know, it's past 4, so sometimes I get a little confused. So we're not talking about transmission. Transmission is transmission, cases is cases. So if you have 50, 60, 70, 180 cases in a school, that's not school transmission. That's 180 cases in the school. So are we talking about transmission within the school? Which I don't think we can document or even monitor at this point. Or we're just talking about cases in the school?
We're talking about cases.
Okay. So cases in the school.
Cases in the school.
All right.
And then cases in Barrington. So,
Right,
yeah,
in
yeah.
the county. Right,
In
right.
the county, yeah.
All right.
That's it. No, it's good to clarify that. I appreciate that.
I think it's good that you continue to sort of, rethink and reprioritize what you're looking at, as long as there's guardrails around it.
Yep.
I would suggest that, I think this has been brought up for, a month now. I mean, the PCR positivity rate is it's useless data. And no one has ever explained to me why it has any value. It doesn't correlate to anything. I mean, everyone can say how great it was that PCR positivity rates went down before Christmas. It's because anybody who traveled over the holidays had to get a PCR test to travel. So even people who had absolutely no symptoms, no nothing, they just needed a PCR test to get on a plane.
Right.
So data just is completely skewed the wrong way. And conversely, as lines get longer for PCR tests, only people who really, really, really have symptoms are going to get tested. And so the PCR positivity rate is going to go way high. And again, when you map it against what's actually going on in the county, which is going up and down, it doesn't correlate, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just sort of a weak analytic, it just doesn't tell you anything good and doesn't really tell you anything bad. It just tells you sort of this this random percentage.
And so that's why when we met again last week, and Ms. McCarsker was at that meeting, is we talked about, if we were going to prioritize, again, those top three, the number of active cases, not that the other data points aren't important, but if we were going to say, what are the, if the board was asking me, what are those top three, or asking the committee, what are those top three, we felt like these three gave a really clear number for the board as far as decision-making. Not that the other ones aren't important, but these ones are driving factors.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think, framing sort of the readouts on it around those things, I think makes sense, and then I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense. Then the other one is, which is really sort of another erroneous data point, which is the hospitalization data, because you're just pulling DHHS hospitalization data, right?
What's reported on the DHHS website, yes.
Right, which are just positive COVID cases. So if I walk out in the parking lot and get run over by a bus and I go to the emergency room, they're going to test me for COVID. And if I'm positive, I'm part of that number. So it's not really, first of all, we're talking about students, so we're not even talking about the right age group. But second of all, the numbers aren't exactly in line. I mean, as an example, New York State had to revise their numbers down by 40% because which is smart. They're testing everybody who walks into the hospital. But once they get the positivity, they send it out and it doesn't get bifurcated. You're just a COVID patient, regardless of why you're there, right?
Okay.
So I mean, I think just focusing on the community that we live in and work in, I think probably makes a lot of sense. Because it tells the truest story, I think, good or bad, right?
I have a couple of concerns also. So it's been, in the meeting, it kind of got brought up about whether or not mask breaks were still continuing during the school year. And I think that we've kind of become consistent and familiar with keeping masks on. It's kind of been just the underlying tone of the year. And I think some of the things like mask breaking are getting put on the back burner and probably not being used as often because they're just assuming, and the teachers and the kids are more used to wearing their masks. So maybe, and I'm sure parents aren't asking as much anymore. However, still assuming that it's happening. But there was a comment made that they didn't even know that mask breaks were a thing anymore. And that's very concerning because it came from someone who would know that that's a thing. And then on top of that, it was real concern about rigorous activity and mask wearing, especially in the elementary school. I think the middle school students can do a pretty good job vouching for themselves when they're overheated, although the activity during gym class has been reduced because of mask wearing and the safety. And in the DHHS calls with Dr. Chan, he mentions a lot about the importance of weighing mental health, health and well-being of students and teachers, and risk factors of COVID, and that the health and well-being of students is more important. And so some of these measures that they're taking through the state, reducing quarantine time, distancing and things like that are all supposed to aid in helping students kind of get back to a normal life because COVID is going to be with us for a long time. So in particular in the schools, having children at BES not be able to have not really been doing a good job at voicing when they're overheated, having a hard time breathing, knowing that it's okay to take a break because I think, at the younger age levels, they're more into people pleasing. So if it's gym class and this is what we're doing, then they're going to just go for it until they can't anymore. And it was a really clear concern. And also doesn't align with, many sports and things that are happening now when they're on, say, the basketball court and they are participating in rigorous activity. They're not masking, but we're asking elementary students who can't vouch for themselves to do that in gym class. So I think that's something that should definitely be looked at and considered because it is important, and then with the cold weather, kids are staying inside more. And also not getting exercise and activity, and then reducing mask breaking and time when they're able to have them off.
We increase mask breaking.
Well, decreasing if they don't get outside for recess.
Oh, gotcha. So for gym, I'm sorry, so for gym class, I mean, if it's outdoors, there's no mask, obviously, right?
Correct.
But right now, it's
Right now, with most of the,
prominent.
It's all indoors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so
Other
is there
than
mask indoors for gym?
yes.
Or all activities indoors?
As of right now, yes.
But not in the middle school, is that what you're saying?
No, it is. But they're, they're more.
And further, it's my understanding too that the rigor of the gym classes has been kind of toned down because of masks, correct?
That is correct.
See, sorry, this seems loud to me. Just to piggyback onto what Stephanie was just saying, it just seems to me that it's kind of counterintuitive. If you want consistency in the schools, I know that in the afternoons, you've got, sports going on, games in the afternoons, and those games, we're not requiring athletes to wear masks while they're competing. So why wouldn't we have the same rules for a gym class? And then we could dial up the rigor of the activity, which probably is, by dialing it down, that's a health risk in and of itself. So it would seem to me that would kill a couple birds with one stone by making it optional for gym classes.
Certainly, it's a tough call. It's a close call. It's with the sports extracurricular activities, we're following the NHIA guidance, and I definitely hear the point that there's some inconsistencies with that in our school policy with gym classes. And you're right, as both physical education teachers said last week, for indoor activities, they've had to curtail the activity based upon what the activity is for indoor gym classes. When we spoke about it today, the concern or the trepidation or hesitation was that you're potentially going to have more inconsistency with our school district policies during the day. So there's not a really great answer to it.
What would be what's the inconsistency? Yeah. What would be the inconsistency?
The inconsistency being that with our face mask policy, as it stands right now, that we have in place for all parts of the indoor, part of inside the school instruction, that students wear masks. So now we're deferring to, based upon whatever the activity is for gym class, a judgment call to be made. And we're also making the assumption that depending on what the gym activity is, that students are, indoors, and it makes sense to keep them relatively spaced out to a certain level depending on what the gym activity is.
Yeah, I guess I don't see it. I mean, I think the judgment call, and I agree, it's a judgment call, but I think the judgment call is really kind of basic in the sense that, take a step back from the policies, forget about what you think about the policies, what doesn't really matter, but just take a step back from the policies. The district needs to make a decision that is, rigorous physical activity. Should they be masked or should they not be masked? Okay? And if that's the policy, then, and we believe that it's better for them to be masked, okay, then mask them. And that means they should be masked for all rigorous activity, which would include extracurricular sports. Okay. If we believe that playing basketball at 3:30 is completely fine without a mask, then playing basketball at 1:30 is completely fine. Have the policy, figure out what the right thing to do is, and then mold the policy around what the right thing to do is, rather than creating policies and then just trying to figure out which one to push it up against. And I'm not going to weigh in on the physical education thing, other than to say I think kids, nobody has ever said that American kids just have too much physical education these days. But, but I think that's kind of the lens that you want to look at it through.
Yeah, and right now, the way the policy is set up, it's actually kind of backwards. You're sort of being biased against kids with less athletic activity. If you try out for a basketball team and make the JV or the varsity, you can run around without a mask. If you don't, you can't. That reeks of unfairness to me. And I think if that allows the gym teachers to dial up their activity, that's good for our kids. And if it gives them a break from masks during the day, that's good for our kids as well. And I think it's a right step in a common sense direction as we start managing this thing more and more like an endemic rather than a pandemic, right? I mean, I think at some point we're all getting tired of these, and it's, you have to edge ourselves toward that precipice, so.
The only other thing for the board, and again, it doesn't need to be a decision, but to think about is students returning from quarantine status that are participating in physical education. If hypothetically, if you were to go with, or if the district decides to go with, depending on what the physical activity is, you have some students that are still required to, based upon the DHHS requirements of day 6 through 10, having to wear a mask, and then you have other students that are not. So you're going to have that level of managing that as well. So again, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up with the board.
I think-
Manage it.
Yeah, bottom line, I mean, we're putting masks on them for their health and well-being. So I think it's important to always think about their health and well-being, right?
Yep. I just want to be clear, you're going to have some students that are, because of that guidance, that are still going to have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those few days.
For those few
It
days.
won't be long.
Absolutely. But that's,
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, again, I just take a step back from all of it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's physical, if we really believe that strongly that you need to be masked for, physical exertion, then you really need to then look at it in its totality.
Okay.
Or the other way around, right? All right.
So those are all the updates that I had relative to recommendations. I think the last step is just an action from the board on the updates to the return to school plan, and then also relative to the face mask policy.
Well, we'll probably just want to start with the return to school plan, right?
Sure.
I think we always vote on that separately. But really, the only updates to the return to school plan are all just centered around the change in DHHS guidance. Well, CDC guidance has been parroted by DHHS. Is there any concerns or questions regarding those changes? So we would need a motion.
we just need to make a motion to accept the changes to the back-to-school plan. Okay.
I make a motion to accept the changes to the back-to-school plan.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
I see you stopped putting the numbers on it. 8.0,
The versions?
9.0,
I did.
10.0, okay.
It's good. It's good. It's good. It gets, I'll tell you, it sounds picky, but it helps you keep track. Okay, so then the next bit would be the mask mandate. So we would need a motion to continue that. Is there any discussion before we have motions? This is not a new issue for anybody, either online or on the board. And I'm sure no one was dumbfounded when they saw it on the agenda.
Not a discussion, but I'd like to make the acknowledgement that I think that this entire board, regardless of how they stand on masks, is very much aware that we as a community are becoming quite weary of not only wearing the things, but even more weary of discussing them. I think the last time we extended the mask mandate, we did so for 2 months, does that sound correct? So I think this time, looking at the way things are trending, if we do follow the trend in South Africa, we're going to see hopefully a nice pick of a spike and then a nice pick downside coming down the other side. When those numbers start dropping off, I think the masks should start coming off the kids and making things more optional for parents. But as that has not quite yet happened, I think I'd be comfortable with a much shorter term, 2 weeks, maybe to February 1st, and also authorize the school to look at making masks optional during gym classes to allow these kids to run around and get a break at the same time.
Should we make those two separate things or all in one?
That's all.
I think you can, well, that was yeah, I mean, and that's a good point, though. I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, Garth, regarding, the board, and yeah, I mean, I think everybody's got fatigue, not on this particular issue, regardless of where people stand on it, and I think I speak for everybody in the universe. It will be nice to get it behind us. I don't have any prolific comments on it. My position on it hasn't really changed. When we started this endeavor in September, I mean, the cornerstones of it were, one, that implementing a mandate would materially change the infectious numbers in Barrington. And number two, that, the mandate was really going to be calibrated towards the availability of vaccines. So where I sit right now, in the middle of January, as I see, based on our own data and the data that DHHS has provided, that there's absolutely no correlation between community infection rates and internal mandate policies. With us, with our neighboring towns, the numbers have floated with the community, up and down, sideways, through the duration of it. So I don't see the correlation there. And then second of all, of course, I think everybody knows that, above the age of 5, everyone has access to a vaccine, has had ample time to be vaccinated. Adults, of course, adults over the age of 12 have had the opportunity, to be boosted as well. So, again, love to get this thing behind us, but that's where I am on it.
And I want to say I agree with David. I mean, I normally do with things on this particular issue. We've come down to just separate sides, but, more than anything, my feeling on the mask thing it's never been about, it's like a religious thing or anything like that. It's more like I'm just terrified of kids missing school days. And currently, what happens is if you test positive, it's still kind of like, we're met with a pandemic. You're saying the kid tests positive for COVID and he's out of school or she's out of school for 5 days. Well, that's some serious social emotional time. That hurts families a lot. And yet if a kid has influenza, as soon as the kid feels better, you're back in school. So it's still different, and it's not like I'm fearful of the health of the kid at this point. It's more of you test positive and damn it, you're out of school for a week. And that just stinks for a kiddo. And because we've all seen it in the last year, with remote learning, whether your kid was in high school or here in Barrington, we had to do it temporarily, that hurts kids emotionally, socially, and dare I say, educationally, which is what our job is. And so if I have a scant chance of helping the kid stay in a classroom, that's why I'm falling down on that side of things, which, again, Dave's common sense and the science of it isn't necessarily 100% there. There's a reason why I walk into Wentworth Douglas Hospital and every single person from the greeter in is wearing a mask. So kids are, that's it. I'm not on a rant for sure, hopefully. So.
I agree with Garth, and I think as much as I am also and I think we're also just so sick of this and the stress of it, even though I know we didn't say that the mask mandate grid wasn't going to be the only factor. So before anyone jumps down my throat about that, I know it was a guiding factor, but not the only factor. I would just want to commit to being consistent with decisions that we are making, that we put a lot of time and thought and effort into that chart and discussing it and disseminating it. So the numbers just aren't there at this point, but believe me, I am very looking forward to the day when they will be, so that it won't be a debate. So.
Was there a second to Garth's motion?
Did you frame up a motion?
Was it?
On that?
Yeah, well.
Make it separate?
No.
No? Okay.
To extend it
Basically, just figure out a date and make a motion for a mandate with the exception of gym class.
With the exception of gym class until.
Would that be the way you'd want it worded?
February 1st, which is our next board meeting.
Physical education class, though?
Oh.
What?
Rigorous activity.
Well, the gym is.
Well, no, now it's going to be physical education.
Except for if you're returning.
From early
Just so that everyone's crystal clear. Or I'll second it. And the lights go out. I know, is that an old bad omen? Now the lights are all going out.
Cast into darkness.
All in favor?
Taylor, I.
Nay.
Neil, aye.
Aye.
All right, there we go, 3-2.
Okay.
And we're rolling.
We have some policies for second read and some policies for first read tonight. We'll take the policies for second read first.
I would have been half in, but I can't. It's in our.
So the policies for second read are BBBE, unexpired term fulfillment. Policy EBCA, which is crisis prevention and emergency response plans. Policy EEACB, which is recording devices on school buses. So those are policies for second read this evening.
But Dan, there's also this policy that's in there that I don't see listed on.
Yes, that needs to go to policy committee first.
Okay.
What is
So
that?
that's the,
Oh, yeah, that was, we pulled that, it was a new policy. So-
Missed that one.
No, we just talked about literally right before the meeting. It's going to go to policy committee before it comes to the board.
Perfect.
Yeah.
do you want to take those policies for second read, or do you want me to continue for policies for first read?
I think we didn't have any changes to any of these policies on the
No.
first read, right?
No. I was just saying that.
Oh,
So you're looking for a motion then, I see?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the following policies for second read: BBBE, EBCA, and EEACB.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the next set of policies are policies for first read. The first one actually went back to policy committee. We had to change the title of the policy. If you recall, it had a different title that had to do with mandatory testing requirements for bus drivers. But the content of the policy did not match with what the title was. So as a policy committee, we revised the title to read School Bus Drivers and Contracted Carriers Requirement of Employment, which in essence now covers what's in this policy.
I think we misspelled requirement.
I was just going to say.
I was gonna say something later.
There's an amendment to that policy. The next one is policy JICC, which is student conduct on school bus. And so this policy is also for a first read. The prior policy is behind it, which read student transportation. So you'll see that a lot of what was in our policy was procedural, and so that has now going to be in the procedure and not necessarily in the policy. The next one is policy DEC, which is non-public sessions. There were some revisions that needed to be made to this policy that were highly recommended. This is the New Hampshire School Boards Association edits to this policy, which updates what some of the changes were per RSA. So you can see our prior non-public sessions policy and what the revision is to that. The next one is policy GBCD, which is background investigation and criminal history records checks. So our prior policy needed a complete rewrite. Again, this is one that's a priority recommended by law due to specific changes that have happened by state law that have occurred from what was in our prior policy.
So Dan, on I'm losing track, JIC and then GBCD, and I only know this because I get the luxury of being with Garth in the policy committee, is that, and it's really just like aesthetic, but you know how NHSBA gives you points that you're supposed to like delete footnote?
Yes.
Or insert what your district does. There are a couple of those scattered throughout the document. I know they're hard to see when NHSBA gives them to us, so
Okay.
I'm not going to call all of them out,
Yep.
but just note that that's the only thing I'm referring to when I'm about to say if we want to put these forward as first read as amended.
Okay.
It's just cleaning that stuff up.
Sure. Thank you.
No, I know, it's hard to see. It's hard to see on their printouts.
Otherwise, we good?
Okay. You want to do it? 1 second.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to move forward EEAEA, JICC, BEC, and GBCD for first read,
Second.
What are we saying?
As amended.
as amended. Get all those parentheses out of there.
And spell requirement, research.
Yes.
Fix requirement.
Required to use spell check.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next is the food service quote that was received. This came up actually at our Wellness Committee meeting last week. So we talked with our food service director, Shelley LeClaire, who's on the Wellness Committee, and there's a need for additional trays at both the middle school and at the elementary school. So the price quote that you have in front of you is for 360 trays, 200 for the elementary school and 160 for the middle school to replace the older food service trays that need to be replaced. So this quote, including shipping, is $1,947.
So that's for how many trays?
That is for a total of 360.
Because this says quantity 30.
No, 12.
I think it's a
12
pack.
12 packs.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
So wait, this is not just to replace old ones. This was, they were short a lot of trays, right?
Yes.
So they don't have enough trays to serve lunch to kids right now.
Kids are stealing trays?
It's been a lot of sledding. Even after all the global warming by
They're
data.
so small. That would be funny to
that's-
see.
I mean, I guess, whatever. I mean, we need trays. So is there something unique? Is this coming out of a special line item? Because this seems to be, it's not over the bid amount. Like, why are we just
Yeah,
pulling it
I was
off the
just about to
budget?
Yeah, so Vicki and I talked about it, so it's, I don't need a motion, it's more informational. We actually talked today, I would just take this from the food service account line. I don't need a specific motion, but since it came up at Wellness Committee meeting, I felt it was just incumbent to just bring it forward, just as
I asked him just to say, tell us how much it was going to be, you know, because he had said at one point, they're expensive. And I'm like, well, how expensive are lunch trays? So
now we know.
now we know.
Save the question
right.
next budget season when we look back and we ask, what happened?
So if anybody is at a friend's house,
They see
a kid's
trays.
house, and you see a tray, please return the tray. All right.
And now we're up to letters of correspondence.
Yeah.
There's 2 letters in the school board packet this evening. One is a letter here from Miss Ann Taylor requesting to resign from her position as 7th and 8th grade reading teacher, effective at the end of this month. She apologizes for the inconvenience that this causes. So that's the first letter of correspondence that I have. The second letter of correspondence is from Ms. Judith Fitzpatrick. Again, is also respectfully asking the school board for resignation from her position as 2nd grade classroom teacher, effective at the end of February, just before the February break on Wednesday, February 23rd. So those are the 2 letters of correspondence for the board's review.
Make a motion to regretfully accept the resignations of Ms. Fitzpatrick and Ms. Taylor.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Well,
What were you saying about staffing earlier?
yeah. Okay. Public comment.
Yep.
Get my thing out.
So when is February vacation if the 23rd is?
3rd week of February.
Yeah, actually,
Right.
can we get some more clarification? I mean, did we ever get clarification on the logic behind the scheduling of vacation next year and what's going on in this region with regards to?
Yes, I have a little bit of clarification, and actually I have the calendar going forward for the February 1st meeting, but I did get a little bit more clarity on that
Whose
subject.
idea was it? And where'd it come from? I mean,
So my understanding is well, it relates to our surrounding school districts and then also with our high schools and then also CTE programs as well. So,
But who decided to change the protocol? Like, which, I mean, not us, obviously. But,
No.
which high schools did this? I mean, how did this happen?
there's a few specific high schools that we meet with. So it's Rochester, it's Somersworth. There's a collaboration of a few.
And they unilaterally decided to do this? I mean, what was the logic? Do we know? Can we ask?
Yep, I can ask. Yep.
You know, I think it does a disservice to our staff and our community. Totally takes away from the whole logic behind it for the state of New Hampshire.
And I think right now, some of the surrounding school districts have not finalized it completely yet. Some have and some have not.
So is there a chance that we can?
I would say there's a slim chance. It's still being debated, I know, in one school district.
Say it's tone deaf is an understatement, not on our part, but on their part. But it is what it is. Okay, cool. That's my public comment. Okay, so public comment. Before we get into it, because I see Diane's got her hand up, so I'm just going to say this. She had asked, and Dan, thank you for providing it. Oyster River High School contract expires June 30th, 2025. Dover, June 30th, 2024. In Cobron, which isn't a contract, it's just it's a letter of understanding, MOA, excuse me, so it's really nothing. But that does expire on June 30th, 2023. So get that taken care of. We'll go ahead and start in person here. Carol. Oh, hold on, let me get this thing. I trust you, but I still got to do it. You
Don't
go
trust
ahead.
me, you'll have to cut me off probably, it's all right.
Yeah.
Is this thing on? Okay, just it didn't sound like it at first, but I'm all over the place. So I just wanted to comment on a couple of things that happened in the discussions up here. One is talking about when we're going to call this an endemic rather than a pandemic. And I think that I'm sure there's epidemiologists that could actually define that. But in my opinion, as long as we're making kids sit out of school for a quarantine or an isolation, it's considered a bigger deal. So I think that we shouldn't be treating it as an endemic until we're saying, just like influenza, when your kid's symptom-free, they can come back, great, have a nice day. As long as we're still having the quarantine periods and the isolation periods, I think that that is the experts in the field saying that it's still a bigger deal than influenza. It's still a bigger deal than these other things, and we're not quite ready to say it's endemic yet, that we're still in the pandemic. I want to comment on the dropping the masks during PE. I think that's a huge mistake. There are studies all over the place that show that respiratory diseases are transmitted at a much higher rate during exercise because you're breathing harder in and out. You have more of those moisture particles coming in and out. There are, to my knowledge, so if you can come up with one, great, I'd love to see it, 0 studies that show that anyone other than severely debilitated people cannot exercise with masks on. There is no physical damage. There is no risk of physical damage to any even remotely healthy person exercising with a mask on. Is it uncomfortable? Yes. Will the kids complain? Yes. The kids complain about PE, some of the kids. They're going to complain without masks on. They're going to say, I'm tired, I can't breathe, I don't want to run around. Are we going to let everybody decide that and sit out of PE class then because they can't breathe? So we might as well. But of course they can breathe because they're healthy people who can breathe. So same thing with masks. There are no studies showing that any of these masks, any of the kinds of masks, do anything to reduce oxygen intake, to reduce exhalation of carbon dioxide, or anything that affects respiratory strength, breathing, efficacy, anything like that. And if you can come up with a study that shows otherwise, I very much would like to see it because I've never seen anything like that. Even when they say kids under 2 shouldn't wear masks, there aren't studies showing that that's a problem that I'm aware of. They're just taking precautions because they're not really sure, because nobody's going to let them strap stuff on their 2-year-old kid and see if they die. So it's a little harder to do those studies. But again, I'm not aware of any that show that there are major problems in a healthy 2-year-old. So I think that that should be strongly reconsidered. I'm a little disappointed that out of nowhere, without any kind of real looking into it or consideration that was just thrown out tonight and then happened is very concerning to me. You know, I go back to every time we come to these discussions that I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not an expert, and as far as I'm aware, none of you are either. We should still be listening to the experts, and exercise is a time they should be wearing masks.
Thank you. Anybody, oh, in person?
Mike Iyer, Caliph Highway. I have a question. I don't know.
I think I just, right.
What's that?
Name, I'm sorry.
Mike Geyer.
Thanks, Mike.
G-U-Y-R-E.
Yeah,
I just have a question, and I'm not sure if I'm just not caught up with. If a child has a close household contact with a positive case, do they still have to quarantine at home?
So it's not a question and answer, it's public comment, but I hear the comment, and so does the,
Okay.
Can get you the answer.
He can give me the answer. Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah. So I just recovered from a bout with COVID. I had absolutely minimal symptoms. So I did isolate prior to having contact with my daughter so that she could continue to come to school, because it was my understanding that if she had contact with me when I tested positive, she wouldn't be able to come to school for at least 5 days, then has to take a test. So that would be much to keeping our kids in school, and how does that kind of play into the guidance? And then the time that I isolated for the last 2 weeks, once I turned positive, I stayed away for the 10 days. I was fortunately with an immunologist, and I think information is half the battle. I was misinformed, as I think maybe a lot of us are, about the vaccines. I'm vaccinated, I got COVID. A lot of people are vaccinated or getting COVID now. She said that under no circumstance was this ever developed to prevent infection. It was just developed to prevent serious illness. So there was a benefit there for a time where we couldn't be infected, but that may play into it. And then the other part of it is we still have a school that has a portion of the population that can't be vaccinated yet. And that was the other reason why I left, is I have a young 20-month-old that falls under the 5 and under that can't be vaccinated. And I think we still need to try to protect them. So that's that.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Hold on, before this thing goes to the logo. Dan?
I'm Dan Mantrick, 353 Scruton Pond Road. I'd like to echo what we said earlier. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Carolyn said. I would remind the staff remind the board that at least a large part of why we wear a mask is not to protect ourselves, but to protect others. And I think there's a great deal of concern of people breathing that can pass these things on. I appreciate people like to see other people's faces, but I think there is some concern not to protect ourselves so much as to protecting other people. And there are vulnerable people around, including our staff and all the families of our students as well.
Dan? All right, anybody else in person? Hey, Diane?
Yes, thank you. Diane St. Jean, Small Road. I want to thank Carolyn for the clarity of her comment on masking during exercise. I wanted to say something about that, but she said it much better than I would have, so thank you. And the other thing is, regarding that, I think it's going to be difficult to explain to students with any kind of logic why they can choose not to wear a mask in PE class, but that they must wear their masks in other classes. I think that's going to be a little bit of a difficult challenge for anybody to come up with an explanation that will satisfy them. And then my other comment is in the agenda packet that is posted online, which I always refer to during meetings, I noticed that the policies that came up for first reading, the policy BEC on non-public and GBCD on background investigation, those policies were not included in the online packet. It ended on page 46 after JICC. So it would really, really be helpful to people that aren't on the board who are interested in such things to be able to see them. And I hope that in the future, all the policies will be included I've said this before, but I'm just going to say it one more time. The packets always used to contain the minutes of the previous meetings that were up for approval, and that no longer happens. And I'm pretty sure that's not an accident, but at some point I'd like to know why. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, Diane. Lori?
Hi, yeah, Laurie Ferguson, Liberty Lane. I just wanted to really express my alarm and disappointment in the board conversation I heard regarding masking this evening. I've been to every board meeting this year, and I always feel like it's very well thought out and people really are trying to stay data focused. And I feel that you guys went completely off the rails. This business about the masking with PE was not data based at all. It just came out of nowhere like some complete broadside thing. I don't know what that was about. I heard a lot of random opinions thrown out as though they were fact regarding things like hospitalizations and breathing, all of that. I also heard a quote, well, after you've told me all year that we were completely data based, we were focusing on the data, I heard, well, we need to figure out what the right thing is to do and then mold the policy around that. Well, no, we have doctors and nurses and epidemiologists, and we have a mask matrix, and we have Dr. Benjamin Chan and even Governor Sununu, if you want to get into politics, telling us the right things to do. We have a mask matrix. We have doctors. We have virologists. They are telling us the right things to do. And taking masks off in an environment where people are breathing hard and breathing their droplets way out far is not what they are recommending. If we could just follow the mask matrix and not make it about what each of us thinks individually is right, it would be a much more well thought out, educated, professional, and safe way to go. You talk over and over again about why you don't have enough teachers. Well, like I've talked to enough people who have said, well, I don't dare to go in that school if I can't depend on it being a safe environment. I really hope that moving forward, you will focus on data because this was the farthest from data I have ever heard this board go. And the person who brought it up, the board member who brought it up, has previously at every previous board meeting that I have observed voted against masks. We are at all-time highs with our numbers in the hospitals, in the town. This is not the time to take away masks in PE. We just need to follow the guidance. We have it. We have the professionals. We go to them when we're sick. We should go to them and listen to them when they are telling us how to stay healthy, how to keep our kids healthy, how to keep our teachers healthy, and how to keep our teachers and children in school. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lori. Okay. Anybody else with their hands up? Okay, I think we're good. You have a non-public, yes?
Motion to move to non-public?
Favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye.